reports are not the same since you've been gone, Billy. Good to have you back, I says.
It's Billy. Mohammed. How long? That's 3 years of hard time.
What is Skeet about?
I guess a Skeet is like a... It's like a tough guy.
Yeah?
They just act tough. Skeet's not that tough. I've been called a Skeet. Listen, you're a Skinner. They don't make them like us anymore.
And what do you think of that? Would you do it again?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Whiskey Wednesday show. Today, we are sitting here with somebody that I've known for over 20 years, Sean Dalton. Sean's played with the Trews. I think that was where we first met when you guys were still called Trouser, or just as about the time you were changing from Trouser to the Trews. And recently, you kind of pulled out of the music business about 10 years ago in 2015. You left the Trews. You were working with Big Sugar for a while. Is that correct? And then, so now, okay, so you left the Trews, and I mean, according to, Wikipedia, you gave it up for the lifestyle and all that, which I totally understand. And most musicians who've done it, toured, and know what that's all about. How is it now, 10 years later, I'm seeing your face on buses and advertisements and all over the internet, and everybody I know back home has got pictures of you and talking about this amazing film that they've been to see called Skeet, which stars you, of course. What's the story there, Sean? How'd that happen?
Well, so I had my own little business going on in English. I had a drum school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still doing music, but just not touring. And Nick Sexton and I, he's a good friend of mine from St.John's, Newfoundland. I remember right when I was quitting the band before I started my business, we were getting together and writing stuff. Like he came up to me with this idea. He was like, I was thinking about making a movie called Skeet, and this is 10 years ago. And so one night we were kind of drunk on my balcony, and he was like, "Take your shirt off." And I was wearing like a chain and stuff, and I was kind of fit at the time. And he was like, "Can you act like a Skeet?" So just started hamming it up for him, and he's like, "This is perfect." He's like, "Let's do this." So we started getting together at the CBC building and writing together, and I wrote the initial script of it, which, I mean, it was kind of a Adderalled up shit show that it didn't go too far. And anyway, I kind of had my own little weird journey of drugs and alcohol for 8 years after that. So my problems didn't stop when I came off the road. The prescription drugs kind of started up, and Nick and I kind of had a bit of a falling out. We were going back and forth. How are we going to write this and how are we going to do this? And we shot a bunch of stuff, but we shot a bunch of stuff that was scriptless. It was just like a whole bunch of footage of me driving around St. John's with a baseball bat and beating people up and doing all this kind of stuff. He went his way, I went my way. I had my own struggles and demons. And 8 years later, we'd gotten back in touch, but 8 years later, he reached out again and said, "Hey man, like I got some money, let's make this movie." And I was 220 pounds and fat and hungover. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I look like shit. I feel like shit." So he flew to Antigonish, Nova Scotia, where I was running my school, and stayed at my place for 2 or 3 days, like just trying to convince me to kind of get back on the horse and get my ass into it,
Mm-hmm.
And, this is right around the time I met my wife, and she, we'd be talking every day. And I would just say to her, I was like, "I can't do this. There's no fucking way." I was like, "My brain isn't working." I was like, "I can't." I was like, I could have acted in this 8 to 10 years ago when I was in shape and clear-headed, but I could barely spell my name. That's how mangled I was. So she, between the three of us, we just kept talking about it. And then we flew to Newfoundland and started shooting stuff. And now it's kind of turned into this hit.
It's amazing. I mean, Nick is, Nick is a younger product of, I grew up, knowing Tommy and Mary and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Nick wasn't really part of my scene because of the age difference, but man, he's made such a big impact back home in St. John's. It's great. I'm going to have him on the show later on in the summer to talk about everything he's done, from his skating through to Deadly and Skeet and everything else he's involved in. He's a bit of a powerhouse right now, which is really cool.
He's unreal.
Yeah.
You know, we would talk, you know, when he was trying to edit this stuff, we were talking 5 times a day. Yeah. You know, because he's a laid back kind of guy, but when he gets onto something, boy, does he ever give a shit. You know, he really cares. So, yeah.
So the passion behind this project, like for me, I come from a time, you know, it's even mentioned in the movie, you know, like I come from a time of hash and fists, and now it's all sort of pills, cocaine, and knives.
Yeah. And
I notice it when I go home. You know, going down, you know, when I was growing up, you'd go down George Street, and there's always you'd get the gangs coming down from, you know, looking for fights at 2:00 in the morning, but you could always sort of stay away from them.
Yeah.
I find now when I go home, like I walk on George Street, you know, after midnight, and within 30 feet, somebody comes up and knocks me, you know, just looking to get me going.
Yeah.
And if I walk from, you know, from Ron Hines down to the Cornerstone, which is now the strip joint, the Cotton Club. Yep. If I do that walk, you know, being a 6'4" kind of tall, big guy, if I do that walk, I get probably approached 5 times for a fight.
Yeah, they want a piece.
Yeah, and it's just it's a very. It used to be that you could do it, you know, if you did get into a fight, you might get a fist. But I mean, now I just ignore everybody because it's so random down there.
And it's like, well, I mean, I'm out here in Vancouver. I mean, you want to. I mean, I called the cops yesterday. Came off the streetcar. Or sorry, came out of the SkyTrain at 9:00 at night. There was a little girl sitting next to a garbage can with her eyes. I'm talking 6 years old, with her eyes rolling back in her head, and she was with this older guy that started kicking her and pulling her on the ground. I mean, this is Granville Street. Granville Street is chaos.
Yeah, I know.
Not just Hastings. They take all the roughest people from Hastings area who can't get along with the other drug dealers, and they move them to Granville now. So,
wow.
You know, so, and like you said about St. John's, it's like drugs are a real problem. Mm-hmm. It's so much of it is drugs. I mean, like you said, I used to be drinking a beer and punching the guy in the head, but there was no money involved, and there was no scamming involved, and there was no seediness behind it. It was just like, I'm aggressive. I feel aggressive. I'm going to punch this guy in the head, and then they're drinking a beer afterwards. It really was like that when you and I were there.
Yeah.
And I go back now, like Tammy and I, my wife, we walk downtown, and it's like, I feel safer near Hastings.
Yeah. It's a really unfortunate thing. And I think it's everywhere. I think it's I don't know if it's worldwide. It's definitely sort of North America wide. The pills, this sort of prescription culture that we're living in right now. I'm kind of out of it myself because I'm living in the country with my wife. You know, I smoke weed. I ignore all pills. Like even when I've been through extreme pain, it's just like I'm really careful with the pills. But I know that it's everywhere, and I mean, I even up here in the country, I see it. You know, it's the crack, the cocaine, the fentanyl's a huge thing now, but the pills too. And I mean, you know that.
Yep.
So you're saying you went through a bad time with some pills? Was it pills that you were doing there for a while?
Oh, it was a total pillhead. Did you see the movie?
I saw the movie, and I was really interested in that. I was going to ask you, and maybe this will help frame the question. There's that one scene where one of the guys was talking about the first time he took a pill and it took away the pain.
Yeah.
I think it was during the circle. Talk about it. You know, the first time I took a pill, it took away the pain. It took away everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, I've sensed that sort of addictive quality in cocaine and stuff like that, but I can't imagine. I had knee pain a few years ago, and the doctor put me on one of these high painkillers, and I was on it for 5 days, and it was having weird reactions to me. I stopped it, and for 2 weeks, I was shivering and sweating nonstop.
Oh, they're no joke. Like, well, I'm running in that scene in the movie when I'm kind of jacked and fit. I was doing a bunch of boxing and jiu-jitsu and stuff at the time, but I was on speed in that scene.
Yeah. Wow.
So I am a crazy junkie, toothless guy in that scene. It's
wow.
The strange thing about this movie is that when I'm watching it, I can't tell if it's art imitating life anymore, if it's life imitating art. It's just like literally like I'm high there, I'm hung over there. It's like the movie is kind of synonymous with the struggle that I was kind of going through at the same time, which is very bizarre. But speed was my go-to. Like it was my doctor gave me Adderall, which, sorry guys, it's meth.
Yeah.
It's giving kids heart attacks. It gave me a bunch. Don't give it to your kids if you can. It's awful. I just started taking it, and at first it was like, where have you been all my life?
Yeah.
You're 40 years old, you start popping that stuff. And I was a little 37. You start taking that stuff, and it's like, you get you shine your shoes, you get your homework done, you get this done, you get that. It was unbelievable for, I don't know, a couple of years. And then you start doubling the dose, of course, because it's not working as well. And if something's not working well, you're not going to go, you're going to go, well, just take another one of those. And next thing you know, I'm banging 20 of those a day, to which my doctor said, it's impossible you're alive.
Wow.
It's completely impossible. And he was like, did you do that like on a day, like one day? And I was like, one day? I've been doing this for years.
Oh, fuck.
With Valium. So when I started getting too high, I would take 2 or 3 Valium, and then but then I'd be too mellow and sloppy, and I'd be teaching someone, and I'd be like, well, I can't drool in front of the kid. So I put them. So I did this for 8 years.
Wow.
Patient, always looking for the perfect combination that never came, by the way, and rehab.
Incredible. And where are you in that journey nowadays?
2 years clean coming up this August.
2 years clean. Congratulations, man. That's amazing.
Switch to coffee.
I'm sure you too. I'm surrounded by addicts and, alcoholics and stuff like that. It comes with the culture.
It really does. So how did you meet the guys? So you're from Newfoundland. Are the other guys? The other guys are Newfies, though.
No, they're all from Winnipeg. So I moved to Toronto when I was 18.
Yep.
And when I was 19 or 20, maybe 20, I went to Russia with a band called Growl. And we came back and we were on City TV doing the breakfast TV thing. And Jake Gold, who was the band's manager, saw me that morning, and they were looking for a bass player out of Winnipeg, and they hadn't found one. So Jake asked me if I wanted to fly out and meet the guys, and I said sure, and that was kind of how that started. And we put the record. I joined in December. We finished Writing in the Trees, recorded it, put it out in May, and then the first tour lasted 22 months and hasn't stopped since.
Oh yeah, amen.
Yeah, it gets pretty crazy, but it's nice to have that part of your life. I mean, it too. It's sort of, being a founding member of the Shrews. It's cool to have kind of a little bit of a stamp on part of Canadians' musical heritage like that.
100%. Well, and that was a great time for bands. And when you guys were were just starting out. I mean, I remember you guys, and it was just like there was a lot of great Canadian bands.
We had record companies in Canada back then. So, you had the Headstones, I, Mother Earth, Moist, The Watchmen, Crash Test Dummies, all these bands.
Great band.
And we had record companies. I mean, we were subsidiaries of the Americans, of course, but at least we had money to exist in Canada. I think that's gone now for the most part.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yep. And what I loved about that scene that you just mentioned too is it was so unpretentious.
Yeah.
It was just like they were just like bar dudes. They were just like hair and faces that have seen a lot of rooms and empty rooms that turned into bigger rooms. Like they were just, it wasn't precious. It was just like, that's why you guys are all so good.
I think there was something to be said for a band that, kind of gets in the van and goes out and does 200 to 400 shows before they become a band.
Amen.
And then, that's when the band really kicks in. I think nowadays younger bands aren't given that time. It's like you put a band together, you got to come out and your first show has got to be fucking smashing.
That's a good point.
And that's a really hard thing to attain. I think I can't remember which agent it was. I'm pretty sure it was Ralph James who told me that he doesn't even like to go see a new band until their 200th show.
No shit, eh?
Yeah. It's like, if you can last that long, then you've got a show together.
Amen to that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, there's also this kind of, I talk to a lot of young people in this city. It's like, so many of them want to tour, right?
Yeah.
All want to tour. You hear about this and they wish they could go on a tour and they wish they'd be going on a tour. And it's like, but to tour what though? Like, don't you love, like, did you write a book that you're touring, or did you make an album that you're in love with, or did you make, what are you touring? You just want to tour. Well, that's the after effect of being in work you're doing. If you're an obsessed writer and it kills you not to write, and you're writing for 10 hours a day, and after a couple of years, like you said, it's like, well, now you got something to tour, or you got, or you're touring a movie, or you're touring, but it's like, love the not to sound like the flaky old guy, but it's like, love the art first.
Yeah. Well, there's so many of the kids. I mean, you've probably experienced this too. Like I do a fair bit of talking in schools and adjudicating for sort of young kids at festivals and stuff. It amazes me how many kids say to me, you know, when I ask them what they want to do, their answer is, "I want to be famous." And I say, "Well, do you want to be a famous astronaut? Do you want to be a famous tennis player? Do you want to be a famous musician?" And they say, "No, I just want to be famous."
Right.
So I think for young musicians, they associate touring with fame.
Yep. That's right.
It used to be that you'd associate an album with fame, but now everybody has an album. Everybody makes an album at home on their fucking computers.
Right. And better quality than we could have 20 years ago.
Exactly. But I think the association with touring and fame, it goes hand in hand. Most people don't realize that. I mean, you know, even after 20 or 30 years for some of these bands touring, we're still sitting in a storage room on empty beer bottle boxes for seats. You know, It's not this big luxury thing that everybody thinks it is.
No, you better love the art. You know what I mean? You better quick, you know what I mean? Because it's gonna be the only thing the only steady thing, you know.
Yes. And if you're touring, it might only be 60 or 90 minutes a day, or if you're opening, I mean, it could be 20 or 30 minutes a day. You know, what do you do with that other 21 or 22 hours of the day? You know, it's now Skeet, as a movie, I mean, it really does focus on the drug culture in Newfoundland. And I get that. And there's been a big change there. It was shot mostly in Shocker Place, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So growing up in Newfoundland, I mean, as a kid, when I grew up in Newfoundland in the 70s and the 80s, I mean, you got beaten up regularly. That was a normal part of being a kid. But you stayed away from Shocker Place, Brophy Place, Buckmaster Circle, all those places. You know, unless, you know, at one point in grade 8, I was dating a girl from Shocker Place, and I was allowed in Shocker Place safely to go visit her.
You're one of the
big thing. But, you know, you'd never walk through these little divisions as an outsider, because you would get beaten up. And I got beaten up regularly by these people. But the other really big part of this film is the immigration and the refugees that are coming into Canada, and, you know, in this film specifically Newfoundland, and they are being set up in these sort of lower income areas. And so you've got this kind of very sort of commonly known hostile environment of, you know, Skeets or whatever. And then you're taking a new element of society and placing it into it. It seems like chaos to me. How was it filming it? Like, apparently some of the refugees, like in the back of the scenes and stuff, were actually not actors or actresses. They were just people who live there. So there is a real sort of culture happening down there. How was it doing the film and seeing that sort of firsthand?
Well, this is the interesting thing about, you know, Shocker Place. I was down with my wife. She was down for all the shootings. She was helping on set, and we couldn't wait to get back. We were up at 5 a.m. every day. We couldn't wait to get coffees and go back to Shocker Place.
Wow.
That was the highlight. We were staying up in the Battery, which was beautiful and all that stuff. We couldn't fucking wait to jump in a car and zip down to Shocker Place. And we hung out there all day with everybody because everybody was outside.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
People were playing beanbag games and playing catch, and all the kids were on bikes and street. It's low income, but I think that also translated is like, it was the only place in St. John's that I saw that had any sense of community. Yeah. There was nowhere else. Everywhere we drove around was like a fucking wasteland.
Yeah.
Where is everybody? And the same thing with my neighborhood here in Vancouver. It's like, where are the children? Like, they were out 100% of the time playing street hockey growing up, and it's like skateboarding and the whole thing. It's if you're playing hockey, if you were a skater dude, you were downtown, as you know. And it's like, I miss you guys.
Yeah. There's a lot of that gone. A lot of that culture is gone. I mean, I blame the phones for that, and phones and the internet. You know, it's a different world.
Yep.
Very strange world, actually. I know I'm old. You know, I can't even really get into talking about it. I'm too old to even talk about it at this point.
I'm with you.
But I'll never understand what it's like, you know, to be. So the question, so Shocker Place in particular, like I said, I remember Shocker Place because I had a relationship with it. And there was a few families in Shocker Place that I was friends with as I grew older. Is there still that element of like, is Shocker Place still like the dangerous place in town? Shocker and Brophy Place, now, are they still like that, or are they more?
They're still, I mean, it's still low income, you know, like, you know, and I'm sure, like, you know, there's minority groups that are causing all kinds of shit too. You know,
Right.
On both. It's not just poor and impoverished is poor and impoverished. I mean, I don't do color or I don't care about any of that shit. It's just it's poverty and a rough neighborhood. And yeah, I mean, they're still rough. You know, we saw traces of drugs in a lot of the houses that we were going into. You know, not in Jocker, but in Stab Court.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, you know, it's still rough times for a lot of these people. You know, but again, I had more fun and I felt more, I guess, family oriented or closer to something in those neighborhoods than I do in this neighborhood.
That's
you know,
amazing.
I don't care about my neighborhood at all. You know,
Okay.
it's peace, it's quiet, it's peaceful, but I have no connection to it. I had a total connection with Jocker Place. I fell in love with it.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. I can see that though. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
I had
everybody's outside, right?
Well, yeah, I had a shaved head and a chain on, and you know, I was like, you know, I'm Billy Skinner now, so I look like the craziest guy there. But I'm a little pussy.
Let me just see what else I had here. So, okay, so Trues, Big Sugar, and then you went up to Antigonish and you started a drum school. Was it a music school or a drum school?
It was kind of turned into a music. I mean, it's called the Dalton's Drum Academy, which is like, it's not really an academy. It was more just like, I like the name of that.
Yeah.
And it started with like 60 drummers, but then hip hop artists started coming in and young singers and flautists and all these, and they would just come in. My basement was the studio where everybody recorded. So I saw, 4 kids come in, 2 black kids and 2 white kids. And they came down with a dirty sock and stuck it on a microphone and made a hip hop album in front of me. And it was fucking killer, So that was for 8 years of that. And then met my wife, moved out here to Vancouver, and we got this movie done. We were flying back to St. John's to pull the movie off. And then now it's the little movie that could. It's actually going back to Toronto to get this. And yeah, I mean, Cineplex called us and they said, you guys are breaking all the records for an indie movie in our history.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It really is. And watching the movie, I mean, it has elements of indie film to it. It's filmed beautifully. I mean, whoever was behind the camera and adjusting the lighting and everything knew what the fuck they were doing.
That was Nigel Markham. That's Nick's dad.
Okay, yeah, great team all around. Everything from the acting through the story. It's a heavier piece than I thought.
Yeah.
But I kind of liked that after I kind of settled into the pace of the movie. Of course, coming from Nick, I'm like, oh, is this going to be anything like, is there going to be any funny elements of Deadly? I mean, Deadly is essentially the comedic version of the same thing, It's the other side of it, right? And Newfoundland culture has for so long been reflected back to us in satire and humor. Everything from the old biddies through to the politicians, it's all been sort of framed in a humorous way. And to see something coming out that addresses relevant, important, and fairly dark side of the culture was really interesting to see.
I'm with you.
How was it immersing yourself in that? Like, it had to be a bit of a heavy role.
Yeah. I mean, well, again, I was going through my own kind of hell. Like the guy, even in the old clips of that, when I'm all kind of jacked, and the pre-jail Billy Skinner guy, and then the post-jail guy who was kind of fat and hungover in the movie. That's what I was at the time. I was a pillhead, when I was the crazy guy, doing crazy real life. And then the fat kind of hung over the hill guy.
Wow.
I was already there. There wasn't a lot going on. It was really just kind of like, film this shithead as he's going through hell, and we'll color some story around it. But it's the real. I mean, it couldn't have been more real.
That's amazing. That's really, really neat. And it's not like you studied to get into the role and became an addict for it. You the role was written for you. I mean, yeah, essentially you being the initial writer. I mean, the role was written for you, right?
Yep.
That's fantastic. Okay. You got some, I mean, of course, coming with, I'm seeing all the accolades and awards that you're getting up for. How does that feel as a new actor?
It's great, man. When I was doing this with Nick, I was looking at him going like, honestly, dude, I can't even tell any, it was so unclear that I couldn't tell. Usually you can kind of tell what you're doing, but I was like, I have no fucking idea if this is going well. I can't tell. And he's like, "Oh, it's great, man. It's great. Let's do it." And we kept doing it. Yeah, I guess other people thought it was real, and I guess we stuck 14 different names in a hat to get into the Screen Awards stuff that's coming up in a couple weeks. And yeah, I got picked for Best Actor.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's
Crazy.
amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
it's a really cool film. I recommend it for everybody, everybody from Newfoundland and abroad as well. I think it's a really important piece in today's culture. I think it's got great entertainment value and also a really good sort of a wake up little poke in the eye too. It is really interesting to see that.
Yeah, man.
So what's the two more questions? What do you see in your future now that you've done a movie and you're kind of like getting, sort of awards for it and stuff, and the movie's having success? Is this acting something that you might want to move into, or?
Yeah, we're looking at some agents right now. We're having a couple of conversations with a couple of different agents, and there's a couple of other things I won't give them out yet, but looks like there's a couple of things that are pretty promising.
That's great.
Shows I think coming up where they might need a musician type guy, and I was like, well, I can pretend to be a musician.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
There was one line in the movie that stuck in my head as a throwback to Ron Hines, and I'm wondering if it was conscious or not. When I'm trying to remember the scene, somebody mentioned, I think it was your mom was talking to you, and she said something about, "Oh, you're all full of promises." The sun, the moon, and the stars.
Yeah.
Was that a direct ripoff from a Ron Hines tune?
I'd have to ask Nick about that, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we're all huge fans of his, but yeah, that was my ex saying, that's enough with the promises, Mr. Sun, Moon, and Stars.
Sun, Moon, and Stars. That's exactly the line. Yeah, because the Ron line is, we were promised the sun and the moon and the stars. We got weathered old clapboards and salt rusted cars.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Very possible.
Yeah. Okay. That was something I was wondering about. It was a great line. She's an awesome actress too, eh?
She's the queen. Yeah.
What was her name again?
Gina.
Great. Just a great story all around. Everybody was fantastic. Yourself and Jay Abdo was wonderful.
Jay was great.
I loved seeing St. John's. I mean, I love just sort of the alleys and the streets, and like that scene where you're running. Like I remember, I know exactly where you are down by the big salt mountain. It's just great. It's great as a Newfoundlander to look back and see all those things. And some of the aerial shots in Newfoundland or St. John's were fantastic too. It's a really great capture of Newfoundland culture, man. And I'm so happy to see you doing it. It's just great. That's awesome.
That's great. I'm glad we got a chance to catch up after all these years and actually really meet soberly and meet,
It is funny meeting sober. I'm mostly sober these days too. I don't drink much anymore. I still smoke a bit of weed, but I don't go out sort of getting off my face like I used to day after day anymore.
Yeah, you slow down a little bit, eh?
Grow out of it, for whatever reason it is.
Yep.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have had Sean Dalton on the show today. Man, what a great chat. Skeet is out now. So Skeet is doing sort of the local stuff back home. I think it's over in Corner Brook again now, or it's bouncing around to the theaters. And it's coming back to Toronto, you say?
Going back to Toronto. Yeah, we're trying to get it back out here to Cineplex in Vancouver too. So it won't die. It's kind of growing instead of getting big. Things have calmed down for Nick and I, but the movie seems to be growing. So it looks like there's going to be, it's going to be more action coming up.
And how does that work in the movie business? I know in the record business, you spend a year writing, and then you put the record together and you record it, and then there's 9 months of planning, and then it comes out, and then there's like a year of after stuff. How does that work with the movie now? It's out and now it's being pushed.
Yeah, now and it's just taking on a life of its own. It's not because we're not. I mean, kind of pushing it. We've had some help for sure. But it's word of mouth. Yeah. It's really word of mouth. It's like anybody that's from Newfoundland. We sold out a theater in Calgary, and shaking hands. We went to Edmonton. It was a packed house in Edmonton. It's like, people are just talking about it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, there are Newfoundland culture, there are pockets of Newfoundland culture all over the country. So it's good that they can find that. And hopefully it'll be branching out past that too, because it is not a Newfoundland centric theme. I mean, the setting is, but
that's right.
Yeah. I think we can all relate to what's going on down there.
Amen. Yeah. No, it's universal for sure.
For sure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, check out the movie Skeet. It is roaming around theaters nowadays. There is a website for it too, where you can go check out the trailers and all that. And it's a movie definitely worth seeing, especially if you've got any connection to Newfoundland. Sean, thanks again for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a million, Ken. Great hanging.
Excellent.